Hi, it's Anna Mason, and in this watercolour tip video I wanted to show you how I went about painting the furry texture to this cute little harvest mouse based on a photo. I first drew an outline drawing of the mouse, but I didn't draw in any of his furry texture. So I began by applying a watery wash of the paler and darker browns in his coat to try to match to the very lightest bits of fur I could see in him. Next I painted the very darkest part of him, his lovely twinkly eye, which was almost black, making sure to leave the reflections in it so that it had shape and shine. Next, I flipped my paper and reference photo around, which gave me a fresh perspective. I used a black-brown mix, but with more water in it than I was using for the eye, to work on the very darkest areas within his coat. Already I was using my smallest brushes and applying with lots of little line brush strokes so that I could start to create the hairy visual texture. Next, I worked on the darker midtones and used a milky to watery mix of some dark brown to apply to the darker areas of his coat. Crucially, this mix was not too thick. This is because I wanted to be able to apply several layers of paint here before I get to the right depth of tone. By doing this, I can build in the right amount of texture. When you let each layer dry before applying the next, several layers of little line markings will create a much furrier look than just one. Once I'd done this darkening up, I could see that my lightest tones were looking too pale in comparison, so I mixed a paler brown mix that was thicker than my first wash, and I applied it as a wash over the top of the markings I'd just made. Because those markings had dried off, they didn't bleed as I applied this mix over them, and we can still see their defined hairiness through this wash. Once that had dried, and it dries really quickly if you're using cotton paper, I went in and applied another layer of the watery to milky dark brown mix, concentrating on the bigger picture of what broader areas on the mouse needed to be darker. All the while I made sure to paint the little lines in the same direction as I saw the fur in my reference photo. Flipping around again, I added in some more lines using the black-brown mix, including some of the whiskers. I then went through the same process on the rest of his body, being sure to compare his head with the rest of his body to get the tonal balance right. I then painted the grass around him, and after all that darkening up, and because tone is relative, I could see that his eye needed darkening up some more. And that in turn led me to see that the lightest tones in lots of parts of his head and body needed darkening, so I went in with another wash to those areas. Then again, when that was dry, I applied another layer of little line details with the black-brown mix to add the finishing hairy touches, always stepping back to see the big picture in terms of what areas needed darkening, and darkening any lighter tones with my light mix to balance the tones and have the mouse appear hairy but solid. And finally, with the whiskers added in, he was finished. I hope this tip video will encourage you to attempt painting something furry with watercolour. It's a lot of fun. The full step-by-step tutorial of this harvest mouse is available now in my online school. If you've enjoyed this tip video, please visit annamasonart.com, where you can sign up for a free step-by-step tutorial, check out the equipment I recommend, view more tip videos, get inspired by my portfolio, and lots more. Thanks for watching.